Buenas tardes desde
Good afternoon from Quito, Ecuador, hosting the Week of Energy. Just for you to know, we have interpretation services. To access these options, please click on the icon at the bottom of your screen. By clicking that icon, then you will have access to the language of your preference. On behalf of the Latin American Energy Organization and the Inter-American Development Bank, be welcome to the 6th edition of the Energy Week. We would like to thank our sponsors in the 6th edition of the Energy Week, our strategic partners and media partners. We're going to start with panel number 6 on digitalization and innovation on the energy sector. Second part. This panel is composed of Roundtable 1, digitalization of infrastructure companies and the benefits for the sector. Virginia Snyder will be moderating this panel. Please, Virginia, turn on your mic and camera so we start with the session. Welcome. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much, Karina, for the introduction. Welcome to this roundtable on digitalization of infrastructure service companies and the benefits for the sector. I've got a distinguished panel for today, so I would like to thank all our speakers for being here today. I'm Virginia Snyder. I'm a senior specialist on the Energy Department and the Inter-American Development Bank. I'm the focus point on innovation and digitalization. Now I will introduce you to our panelists today. So please turn on your cameras. The bios are in English, so I will read the bios in English, but remember that you have the interpretation icon, so you can move from one language to the other. Michelle Halak is my colleague from IDB.
Knowledge agenda at the bank, and she's also an energy policy advisor at the Florence School of Regulation. She works in several programs on policy issues across Latin America and the Caribbean. Welcome, Michelle. I want to also introduce Denise Adrian Albarracin Maca. He goes by Adrian. He's the head of planning and management of infrastructure and network in Enel Colombia. He's an electrical engineer. And he has more than 15 years of experience. Welcome, Adrian. I wanted to also introduce Alex Almeida Piñati, who is the head of operational management at Campinas SP Brazil. He's a master's of science in power systems, a bachelor's degree in electrical engineer, and he has also more than 15 years of experience in distribution with large experience in asset management, engineering, and operations. Welcome, Alex. I also wanted to welcome Maria Viera. She's the director at Open Hydro. She is a civil engineer specialized in hydraulic and environmental with a master's degree in advanced studies in sustainable water resources. She specializes in hydroelectric energy, and she has extensive experience in international projects. Welcome, Maria. I also wanted to introduce Augusto Bonsi, my colleague from INDV. He has also a Master's of Science in Energy Policy and Climate from Johns Hopkins University. He has several years of experience in the energy sector, more than 20 years actually of experience. And he has been working in multilateral organizations and in the private sector and supporting countries to develop renewable energy projects, reconstruction, infrastructure development, and regional integration. Welcome, Augusto. So welcome, everyone. Everyone, cameras are on. Thank you very much. So, para entrar en tema, voy a hacer una breve presentación.
So just to start with the topic, I'm going to make a short introduction about digitalization in the energy sector from the bank's perspective. If you allow me, I will share my screen. Okay, the digital transformation of energy services in the region for the bank. This is within the framework of the 2025 vision for the IDP. We have a strategy to promote economic recovery in the region, and we believe that innovation and digitalization are one of the main pillars to achieve these results, and this can be shown in our vision 2025. First, to achieve sustainable economic growth. Secondly, to identify a pathway to accelerate economic recovery that we really need in our region. And thirdly, to present a value proposal. So this current crisis then turns into an opportunity for Latin America and the Caribbean. As part of this vision, digitalization is fundamental to promote economic recovery that is needed, so much needed in the region. However, as we will see in the future, there are many challenges to face, and these are made worse by the pandemic. This digital transformation will bring huge benefits for the region, and especially if we invest in infrastructure. For instance, the use of digital technologies will allow a better management of renewable energies, such as the solar energy and wind energy, and its better inclusion in the electric systems in the region. And also, this transform in the electric grid will reduce costs of operation and maintenance, and also to improve efficiency in our transmission and distribution grids. The management programs for demand is based in the analysis of a large number of data could save something like $270 billion in investment. This is an estimate by the International Energy Agency. The potential impacts of adopting these innovative technologies may be even more important than the Industrial Revolution. If we make the most of this opportunity, then we can produce growth, innovation, and social inclusion in the region. But there's a serious problem in the region. What we have invested in the last years in infrastructure is below what we should be investing. And there you can see the figures. If we invested what we really had to invest, the whole reality of the region would be different. So which are the challenges ahead and the options and possibilities for the future? Well, we have the challenge to make our systems more flexible, to include more renewables, also to improve so much needed changes as reducing loss in the sector, and also to include consumers in the whole process. We can say that the lack of investment in the sector implied in a way that we have a huge deficit when it comes to access. Secondly, there's no robust ecosystem in the region for the inclusion of these systems. If we look at the amount of money invested in research and development and the number of patents generated in the region, we will see that figures are way too low. Thirdly, the energy sector is very important for the region. It represents a large proportion of the GDP. So investing in this sector is a great opportunity. This is an estimate. This is included in the IDB report for the development of Americas, and we state that reducing 50% the cost of infrastructure services, thanks to a better use of digital technologies, could increase GDP in the region in 6% in the next 10 years. Briefly, I want to tell you about our vision at the bank and the transformation strategy that we have specifically prepared for the infrastructure and energy sector in the bank. These align with the 2025 vision, and we have 5 objectives. First is to increase the knowledge and digital skills of our teams. Secondly, to modernize public policies and regulatory frameworks. This could be through investment loans and other processes to make progress in this area. Thirdly, to promote the adoption of digital technologies in the government and also companies related to public services in these sectors. And one of my colleagues will be telling us more about this. Fourth, to improve the digital ecosystem in each of the countries in the region. And lastly, to provide citizens with data and tools so that they can be part of this value chain, this part of this revolution, turning them into from consumers into prosumers. At the bank, we are providing training in digital issues, cybersecurity, use and management of data. We have developed several guidelines. These are disruptive for autonomous vehicles. We have participating in several open innovation processes. We are developing digital tools to provide support to our clients in the region. A specific case that I would like to share, this is Energizados, that is one of the companies of public services, and we're using AI and machine learning to detect non-technical loss in the distribution sector so that we can take and implement the actions to reduce costs. So now we will listen to our colleagues. Let's see their opinion about digital transformation and which are the opportunities ahead in the region. I'm going to start with Michelle, that will tell us about some work about demand management. Michelle, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here. Give me a second. I'm going to try to share my screen. No problem. Well, Michelle uploads her presentation. Remember that you can ask your questions in the chat. We're going to be answering those questions at the end of the presentation, depending on the time available. And then I will ask those questions to the panelists. Okay, so now it's in presentation mode. Michelle, you have the floor.
Main question it was how to import electricity consumer through demand response approach. And digitalization is a key answer to that. So I'm really happy to be able to present this today. And as Virginia said, this is a key element inside of the vision 2025 vision of the IDB group. First, because talk about the digital economy, but not just because of that, it's also a climate change action, and it also can help to support small and medium enterprise, and can bring, if you do it well and with a good policies, also to increase gender diversity, because it, as Virginia just said, can generate a lot of jobs and a lot of growth. And we hope that this growth and jobs will be much more equal in the next decade. So let's talk a little bit about that. The first thing is that when you think about reduction that's necessary for the 2050 objective, IEA 2021 reports say that 55% of the emission reduction require the mixture of deployment of low carbon technologies and active involvement or engagement of citizens and consumers. So it's key, the involvement of citizens and consumers. And when you think about nowadays about our load, here it's just an example with few countries in the region. We know, everybody that works in the electricity sector know that our loads is far from being a flat load. We have variations during the day of the days. These have different peak hours. It changed during the COVID, and we know that there is a big difference between the hours that we consume less and the hours we consume more electricity. And when you ask people about how they see the peak, They know that there is a peak hour of electricity, and they know it means a different cost. What we can see that some 45%, a big part of the population already know that they are aware about the electricity peaks in their city. They know that the people consume electricity in different time, but just 21% are aware that there are different costs associated with peak and off-peak costs in the electricity sector in their cities. And so this opened the room for demand response programs. And what is it? Demand response is a way to encourage change in the consumer behavior through incentives. So it's not some mandatory, it's something that we give incentive, and people willingly, they have the willing to change. And how? Here it's the key element. It's the advanced metering infrastructure and telecommunication tools. So in this sense, digitalization allows actually demand response to achieve everybody, including the household. And what is it important? First, it can improve price signal, so empower consumers. Second, it can be more flexible to the demand curve, so you have a better fit to intermittent renewables. And third, it increases the power system efficiency. It can mitigate emissions, and it can reduce electricity costs. So that's a key element. And when you think about the demand response, there is a kind of vicious cycle that usually people does not know much about the electricity bill and does not know much about what are the costs. As we see, just 21% knows that there is different costs during the day. And because they don't know, they are not allowed to answer, they don't answer. And it's hard for usually policymakers and regulators to actually change, to actually know the benefit that the demand response can have in households. And in this sense, it's difficult to change and to do the investment necessary for that. And as a result, what we have is a really small amount of pilots, and we don't have we have some policies in some countries like Brazil, Uruguay, and Colombia, but the adoption is really small until now. And so what we think, okay, let's try to do an experiment. So as we don't have enough people adopting this kind of thing, let's try to do something hypothetical. And this is the base of this study. And our experiment, we asked, what are the best strategies to encourage adoption of demand management plans? What are the preferred tools for tracking electricity expenditure, and who is the most propense to move to a demand management in tariff plan? And we did an online experiment. We did more than 50,000 interviews in the region, and it's around 240 and 170 interviews by country. We have 11 different countries, and we have, for the 50,000 that we tried to interview, we have 4,000 interviews that completed the question with coherence, and they actually pay their bill. That's something that was really important also for our experiment, because we just considered people that actually answered that they pay their own electricity. So what kind of questions and what kind of results we see? The first one is associated with what are the best strategies to encourage adherence to demand management. And you present different options for them. And there is a big discussion about if the best way to control directly the appliance, if it's better to have just price mechanisms, or you can have simplified price mechanisms like peak hour saving goals. And what we observe is that the most, the people that have more willingness to adopt, it's the peak hour saving goals, which makes sense in somehow, because when you have just peak hours tariff, they are much more complex and tend to be complicated to people to understand and adopt. And also when you have direct control, it's easier, but also it's something that people usually are afraid to have somebody controlling their own appliance. So there's these trade-offs, and peak hour saving goals, it's one of the main programs that people would be interested. And also we ask the kind of preferred tools, and it's app. So people really want to use apps to control the electricity expenditures. And what are the most propense, what are the most propense people to move to a demand management plan tariff? When you talk about middle income household, and here it's not talking about middle class, but the average, the people who has the income that's in the middle of our distribution of incomes in the region. And it also makes sense because it's the people who have appliance and interest. And just to finalize with some conclusion, because I know my time's off, digitalization actually it's advanced enable demand response. There is in the experiment, and of course the experiment is just a step zero in this process, but you have a really important and good acceptance when you ask the question in the way that people can understand that. Also we need digital tool for tracking electricity consumption, and that it's really important, the relation between investment policy and programs. And I thank you very much. Questions are more than welcome. The document that we are publishing will be really soon online. And I'd like to thank you, the co-authors of this paper, and also especially Mariana Weiss, who is helping me to coordinate this research. And thank you very much, Virginia, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for presenting this, and how important it is not just to have the right technical tools, the technology, but also you highlighted several aspects that I think are relevant, such as the innovation, the approach on how you do demand management, but also the educational portion. How do you explain it? How do you communicate it? And how can people will, based on that good understanding, also decide on that or no? Now, that is one end of the digitalization of the distribution of our grid. Now let's go to another important aspect, more on the utility side, that Adrián is going to present us. I'm going to switch this back to Spanish. Sorry. So Adrián nos va a estar presentando sobre.
Adrian will be telling us about the automatization of substations. I was lucky enough to actually see another presentation by Adrian, and I thought it was fascinating. So go ahead, Adrian. Good afternoon. How are you? It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this 6th Energy Week organized by OLADE. Today, I will be telling you about 3 projects that we have at Enel Cadenza. Know that the Enel Group is present in 5 countries in Latin America: Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, and Colombia. And basically, actually 6 months ago, I was working as an investment planner within the Cadenza. And the level of investments is somewhere around 220 billion euros. And a lot of the investment is focused on energy transitions. So for the Enel Group, our headquarters is Italy, and the energy transition is something that we are trying to do in Europe and in Latin America. And I want to tell you a bit about 3 projects that, in my view, are significant for the digitalization of the grid. And as was mentioned at the beginning of the panel, it is vital to invest in infrastructure so that we can have a digitalized infrastructure. We are energy distributors in Colombia. We have about 5 business in Colombia that focus on the different parts of the value chain of energy. We are focused on energy distribution. We work with distribution and with trading. There is another company called Energía that focuses on generation, but they do not deal with transmission. So one of the main focuses for investment is the high tension system. In Querenza, we have an operation headquarters in Bogota, and then we are connected to Denmark, and we service 4 million customers. We invest in high tension systems. We have a system called Bogota 2030, and its main objective is to prep for the energy transition with a high quality. We will be multiplying the quality of the substations in Bogota in order to undertake this transition into electrical mobility and into other areas. And we also want to have an idle, between inverted commas, system, because we know the more substations we have available, we will then have a contingency plan to ensure the quality of the system, and that is fundamental for the transition. And so we want to duplicate the amount of substations available, and in all of these substations, we will transition from a conventional substation to a digital substation. Last year, we had our first fully digital substation in Colombia deployed. It meets a demand of 80 megawatts in Bogota. And we built this substation to provide a supply for the east of Bogota and also provide energy for the treatment plant in Bogota. That particular water treatment plant in Bogota seeks to decontaminate the waters of our river. And this is a plant that is fully digitalized. It has 3 communication levels. So the power switches, the hardware is digitalized, and then we have a second level of communication for the control center, and then we have a third one that goes from the control center all the way to a hub. All of this is done through an Ethernet buffer, so we eliminated all of the electrical wiring. That is 80% of the electrical wiring of the substation is eliminated, and that creates many advantages. First, we have more security because the less cables and the less intervention over the equipment conducted by the workers, the more we can guarantee their health. I would say that the first objective of this group is to guarantee that all workers go back home healthy and alive. That is an important indicator for us and, of course, for society as well. Among other aspects, we also want to reduce space. We are, of course, reducing the number of ducts and construction work we use, and that is an improvement. And we also have real-time interaction with our centers. So we have 1 out of 30 substations being fully digitalized, and we're moving towards digitalizing all of them.
It is very important for us that national agencies in Colombia are aware of these technologies available at the market that are safer, more flexible, not invasive. So that is work that takes time, and we have regulatory also challenges because all this investment need to be acknowledged as part of the distribution business. So our regulatory framework really allows us to do this. Also finding new areas for the new technologies that are the most important challenges that we are facing. The second project that we are having, DCO 4.0, district system operation. Basically, what we do is to optimize the mid-tension grid. We have 4,000 clients for each feeder, and we have 7 to 8 points in each section. In the past, we had employees for this. Each section point, they were revising all the sections and trying to find failure. What we're doing now is doing all these processes, but now they are automated. Now we have 8,000 operation points in the grid distributed in the 24,000 square meters of our operation area. That has resulted in an improvement in services. And now we have improved the average time of clients with interrupted services. And now we are going in the second phase, that is the interconnection with fiber optic. In the past, they could use other systems, but thanks to some incentives in the Colombian regulations, we can have a significant deployment of optic fiber in this element this year. And this was a project started in 2014 with installation of 1,000 devices. Now we have increased deployments and we're using optic fiber to improve results. This is an important project when it comes to digitalization. And the last project I wanted to tell you about has to do with smart metering. Let's say that the Colombian government is promoting that 70% of consumers in Colombia had smart metering by 2030. We have been working jointly with our regulatory teams about all the incentives involved and all the regulations involved. And we have started a pilot program of 30,000 smart metering devices. Those that are aware of Binel's group, in Italy, they have 100% of smart metering devices. They have 32 million clients of smart metering. And that experience of the Enel group at international level, we're trying to replicate that in Colombia. We have implemented a pilot program of 30,000 smart metering devices. Also, there is a cross-cutting project. You know that all these projects require a lot of investment in information technology. So infrastructure investment and telecommunication investment and in information systems go hand in hand with these technologies. These are the three main projects at large scale I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much, Adrian. So we have a lot to contribute to other agencies of people that are interested in this based on our digitalization experience in the COENSA. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adrian. It was a very interesting presentation. Some of your data are really shocking. You talked about 80% of the electric cables. That is a very high percentage. You also mentioned safety of staff, also reducing the space required for substations and all the benefits produced by that when it comes to environment, increasing flexibility, having better control in real time. These are very relevant indicators. So thank you very much for sharing all the three excellent examples in Colombia. Thank you. Now let's move on to Maria, and this is another subsector that is very relevant to our region. We are talking about hydroelectric stations. So please, Maria, tell us a little bit more about digitalization in hydroelectric stations. Thank you very much. Can you see the screen there? Yeah, but it should be on presentation mode. Yeah, perfect now. Okay, so thank you very much, Virginia, for your introduction. I would like to thank IDB and Olave for the invitation to be part in this panel. And thank you to Arturo Alarcón, Senior Specialist in Energy at the IDB, for creating this presentation with me. I want to tell you about digitalization in hydroelectric stations. Historically, the region has led the process of electric generation with almost 200 gigawatts in operation. The participation of hydroelectric generation on the total energy generated is beyond 45% of the electric grid in the last 5 decades. This percentage is above the global average that is 17% in 2020. Because of this percentage of hydroelectric generation represents the importance of this resource for the development of economies in the region. It also marks the future of the energy transition towards renewable energies. It also influences resilience and the adaptation of the region to these times we are lived in. More than 100 gigawatts, more than half of the production is older than 30 years old, and more than 62 gigawatts are older than 40 years. A little bit more than half of these are in Brazil. A study published last year considers that the estimated investment in the next decade is $33 billion. This does not exclude civil infrastructure. According to the expansion plans in the countries, we estimate an increase in the capacity of 26 gigawatts by 2030. This figure is far from the 60 gigawatts that we would achieve if we continue growing at this pace. Because of these, hydroelectric stations in Latin America and the Caribbean is a need to maintain this hydroelectric generation grid in operation for the next decade. Since new technologies, as you can see on the left, can be used for all the phases of the life cycle of a hydroelectric station, I'm going to focus on the importance of digitalization during operation. So digitalization is an opportunity as part of the modernization processes that will take place in the coming years to transform maintenance operations of hydroelectric stations, to adapt these stations to the new requirements of the systems that include more and more renewables. So basically, this is the transformation of analogical operations through the mass use of digital technologies. As you can see on the right, there was a survey in 2019 about the systems that were being used by the companies, and those monitoring and control systems were already digital in all the companies that answered the survey, that represent a quarter of the installed capacity in the region. However, we can see that more advanced digital solutions like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and intelligent maintenance system for devices are not that expanded. So which are the objectives of digitalization? One of the main objectives is to increase efficiency and operational safety. Real-time monitoring allows operators to maximize operations and improve performance of devices. And this will reflect in a reduction of the maintenance cost and a reduction in the operational costs. By digitalizing the stations will allow them to adapt to the new role of integrating renewable energies in the system, from the operational to the coordination aspects. From the operational standpoint, digital technologies will improve control of the stations and will provide auxiliary services to the grid and coordinating with those sources, since real-time metering of weather conditions will allow to use renewable sources. Lastly, these technologies will help improve the use of assets, improving data quality and data processing, forecast modeling. All these will allow to reduce uncertainty. This also will improve coordination with other uses, and these energies will improve this coordination so that we can provide energy security and water security, also adaptation to flooding, and to get digital tools to get to know better all the weather risks and this will inform all the measures to be taken at a structural and operational level to improve resilience of assets. Benefits, well, digitalization will optimize all operational processes and then increases productivity of devices. This has an impact, a direct impact on the reduction of costs, maintenance and operations, and improves reliability of flexibility services in the grid that allows to adopt variable renewable energy sources. EDP reduce loss in 24%, according to a study on digitalization. Also, the International Energy Agency states that savings can represent 5% of annual cost of electricity generation if there is an implementation of digital technologies. And some manufacturers said that digital technologies can improve safety and increase reliability up to 1%. But apart from benefits, there are also challenges and barriers. These have to do with regulatory frameworks that do not promote digitalization because of lack of incentives, or the design of markets that do not acknowledge auxiliary services provided by hydroelectric stations, or lack of infrastructure that hampers the use of digital systems. Also, there's a barrier when it comes to cost and obsolescence of technology. Cost may vary depending on the solutions to be implemented. Also, we need to invest in training opportunities and also to promote, as I said earlier, the ecosystem and the training of new professionals in the national area. Also, automatizing processes, thus less human participation, so errors are not that visible, and the systems may be more vulnerable to IT threats. And vulnerability of systems is something important that cannot be ignored, and we have to identify the critical stations in systems that are interconnected. With these new technologies, there are new projects, hybrid projects with solar photovoltaic panels. In Brazil, for instance, it's a pioneer, and digitalization operational systems allows us to integrate and complement the production of both energies. Digital progress can be very useful when it comes to assess the use of existing stations and transforming those facilities in pumping facilities. The hydroelectric sector also may have more opportunities beyond decarbonization of the electric grid in other sectors through the production of hydrogen. If we have better data processing, central stations can be optimize their results using the surplus of energy to produce green hydrogen.
The vision of open hydro is to have a planet that is resilient to weather without carbon emissions, where water services and energy services are accessible for everyone. And for us, the digitalization of hydropower centrals helps the hydropower sector move forward with knowledge about the risks and climate opportunities, and informs our actions. Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for the presentation. I do want to note that going back to resilience, it is paramount to digitalize centrals because our stations are getting old, but they are important for the region. So if we do not digitalize them and get with the times, we will come into many issues. You mentioned 5% of a cost reduction for electricity is an option for digitalization. And I also want to highlight what you mentioned about the importance of how if we digitalize these stations, we can have a more resilient sector. And this, of course, goes hand in hand with the management of the environment and the mitigation of climate change. So thank you, Maria, for your presentation. I want to go now to Alex Almeida. He will be presenting in English. He will talk about the digitalization of present and future generations. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is in good health. I'm Alex Pignacci. I'm going to talk about digitalization in distribution and specifically some examples in CPFL Energia. As we have a short time here, I'm going to quickly pass an introduction about CPFL. CPFL is part of State Grid Corporation of China, and they invested about 12 billions in Brazilian electric sector in the last years. The CPFL group acts in the distribution, generation and transmission, commercialization and services, and have a total amount of earns near to 8 billion per year. Okay, we have 4 distribution companies, and I'm going to focus more in the distributions, but we also have these power plants all over the country, as you can see in the map. So talking about distribution and our operations, we serve more than 10 million clients today in 687 cities. We have about 12.9 thousand kilometers of sub-transmission lines, 556 on substations, 215 kilometers of medium voltage distribution grid, and 170,000 kilometers of low voltage distribution grid. We also have more than 10,000 automatic reclosers installed in the grid, and more than 35,000 meters with smart meters with telemetry in medium voltage customers, borders, and free market clients. Our 4 companies and the clients are distributed like you see in the picture. And talking about our sustainability in our strategy, for the first time in this last cycle, we have a sustainability plan combined to our strategic plan, because we believe that how we deliver our strategic goals and targets is as important as delivering the strategic. So I'm going to focus on new technologies and digitalization that you can see by this pizza that are important pillars of our strategic and sustainability plans. And just to finish this part, as you can see in this pillar, we are focused in smart solutions, and it's totally connected to digitalization. That is one of the main topic here. Okay. Okay, talking about digital in operations, I brought to you today our last implementations. We have just made a go live of a new ADMS system. For those who doesn't know, ADMS is the Advanced Distribution Management System that controls all the distribution grid and all the emergency events that we have in the grid, all the outages, and our ADMS is now fully integrated to control our grid. Okay, this was the largest project of CPFL in these last years, and this implementation is the most complete of an ADMS in Brazil nowadays. CPFL was the first one to implement this system, this complex system in operations in Brazil. So this brought some improvements, like a fully unified system with operator productivity increasing, several automatic energy restoration. We are prepared to receive data from future smart grid, real-time fault location, voltage control, energy grid sensor simulations, and process automation and beyond. And this system can impact severely our duration and frequency indicators. That is an important benefit to our customers, and also reduce some compensation fines that we have in our regulation, and also energy losses. And we are just finished the blueprint of our new dispatch system, fully automated, the field service cloud from Oracle, that we are going to do the go live next year in our distribution companies. This system uses artificial intelligence to do the best dispatch of our commercial and emergency events, taking information from all our crew, field crew, and geolocation, and dispatching the best team to serve, to attend some event in the grid. So these two tools are the most important tools we have in this moment for digitalization in operations. I also brought some experience. We are testing 4 new technologies of communication, digital metering, smart metering. So this is a big project in Jaguariúna city here in São Paulo. So we are testing these 4 communication types of technology, and already invested 26 million of capex in this project, and replaced about 22,000 meters for smart metering. I mentioned that we have 556 on substations, and they are all fully controlled, fully remotely controlled since 2012. So this is our digitalization in the grid. And we also installed in these last years almost 13.8 thousand automatic reclosers, and we expect to reach 23.5 by 2027. It's part of our strategic plan. So this is a very important pillar to the digitalization process of our grid. And we also have some experience to share digitalization, the customer experience. So we have incremented 27.6% our interactions with our customers, our digital interactions. So now from 135 million of interactions per year, 116 are digital interactions we have with our customers. So this is another important pillar that we are focusing in the plan, strategic plan of CPFL Energía.
Alex, 30 seconds to wrap up, please.
Okay, just finishing. So this is just a resume of everything that I said. And this is the results. Last year, we had 2 of our distribution companies in the top 5. 3 of our distribution company in the top 5 of the duration indicator, and also they had good performance in the frequency indicator. We have 3 of the best companies of Brazil in São Paulo. We are also doing huge investments in the South region. There is another company there that we are constantly decreasing these numbers. And as you can see, our companies perform above the average of Brazil indicators. And this is a little bit about these historical indicators, how we have been performing, applying all this strategy of digitalization, innovation, all the technology we are putting on the grid and benefiting our customers. So just to finish, what is next? We think about large scale of telemetering, if the regulation advances to allow this, advance of the use of artificial intelligence in operations and dispatch, use the toolkit of ADMS to improve our outage recovery, advancing cybersecurity in CX, also remote disconnections and reconnections with smart metering. And I just brought some examples of R&D and innovation initiatives that we are running to bring more technology to this interaction with our customers. Okay, that's what I brought to you today about the CPFL experience. I'm open to questions, and you can also find me on the LinkedIn if you want to talk about the digitalization in CPFL. And everyone is invited also to visit our company for any benchmark you need. Okay.
Thank you so much, Alex, for the wonderful presentation. It's really impressive, all the work that you guys are doing. And it's a perfect introduction for our next topic that Augusto Gonz is gonna present us, since all the investments and all the operations that you guys have been doing, how you can see the improvement, drastically improvement and outstanding numbers that you have on SAIFI compared with other companies and utilities. So thank you so much for your presentation. And Augusto, adelante.
Augusto, you have the floor. Good afternoon. I will switch into English for my presentation. And I know we are running out of time, but I will be very brief in the introduction. And I will tell you about the new tool that we're developing. So just to check.
Basically, I was going to go through this very quickly, just to show that digitalization, it is a wide topic with a big scope that goes against technologies, against all the different type of services, and also that at the bank, we see the digitalization with huge opportunities in terms of cost savings, which has already mentioned, but also in terms of efficiencies and contributing to the reduction in emissions. And we also see from all the numbers that it is a transformation. Wherever number we talk about on smart meters or that households be integrated, it's a big transformation. All of this is consistent with our number 2 priority on the IDB Vision 2025, which is the digital economy. And to put that together, what we have been receiving requests from utilities in the past was to develop a tool that consolidates the best practice and also the indicators in this area. So we have recently developed the Electro Kit that has the objective to identify the challenges, opportunities, and develop an action plan with the utility to help them in this transformation, but also it supports the utilities to become more sustainable, efficient, and to improve customer experience. The Electro Kit is organized in 16 activities. It captures most processes of a typical utility and includes case studies, technical reference, methodologies, and the link to publications. All of these are the different features of the toolkit, which I will not have the time to present here, but it's quite wide in terms of the audience that it captures. Very briefly, I wanted to show here that toolkit has been organized into 4 areas: technical operations, which is the core of an activity, also financial, organizational, and corporate governance, environmental, social resilience, and also the one that we are mostly talking about today, which is innovation and new business model. And you can see that in this group of activities on the left side. So we have been developing the Electro Kit to become a practical guide for the utilities, a tool that they can consult and discuss with the bank, technical support in any of these 16 activities. These are not theoretical discussions, it's a platform to concrete ideas and solutions. So for example, in the technical and operations, we're talking earlier here, Alex presenting the SAID. So in this tool, the utility can enter its number and compare to other utilities in the country or outside the country and see how do you position your performance against other benchmarks. You can also do some filtering, so I can compare my utility with utilities on the same size or utilities which are larger or smaller. So there is a lot of flexibility in that toolkit that will allow the utilities to measure its performance and to see how it is going in terms of different indicators. It can be like technical quality of the service, like we're discussing here, Said, and can be about efficiency in operations in terms of the ratios of the cost, or it can also be about electricity loss reduction. So you can compare all your indicators in any of those areas that I'm describing here against benchmarks in the industry or other utilities in the region. I just also wanted to share here one example that last year we have engaging with a utility in South America, basically developing what are the business model for the utility of the future. So it was already one actual implementation of the toolkit with an utility reviewing what are the other utilities doing, how are they preparing for this future of much more interconnection, and also with a great emphasis on the consumer. This becomes very clear. The other thing that we have seen in this kind of session is that what we are seeing, it is the whole electricity grid becoming a digital grid, coupled with a lot of new services. At the bank, we put a lot of emphasis on sharing knowledge, and in that regard, we have put all the results of this workshop in a publication, which is available at the IDB website, and I encourage everyone to take a look on that. Here's a picture of that publication, which is available for download. And I know we are short on time, so let me finish here saying that we see digitalization as a core element of the energy sector, which is going through a fast transformation, enabling opportunities. We are committed to supporting the utilities to succeed, and we hope this new product that the bank is developing will be another instrument in the toolbox. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Virginia. And I know it was fast, but I wanted to catch up a little bit.
Thank you so much for doing that, Augusto, and thank you so much for the presentation. And I really invite everyone to get to know the electric kit that Augusto has been leading at the IDB. It's a fantastic work. I think it's very useful. We got some questions on the chat about some apps or other tools. I think this one is a fantastic one that the IDB has developed. So thank you so much. We are very short on time, so what we're going to do, I'm going to ask all the panelists to please turn on your cameras, and I'm going to ask you to be very respectful of time, and in 30 seconds to share with the audience what would you recommend for countries that are less developed on digitalization, or utilities, or hydroelectric power stations that are less developed on digitalization, how to start, where to start. So I'm going to go in the same order that we started this panel, and if you can give me in 30 seconds like a recommendation, I'll appreciate it. So I'll start with Michelle.
Thank you, Virginia. In 30 seconds, I guess two things. One is pushing investment and pilots, and somehow need to start, but also looking all the questions about regulations, because the remuneration of most of these assets related with some kind of regulation and market design. So my 30 seconds.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Adrián. No te escuchamos, Adrián. Estás en mute.
We cannot hear you. You're on mute. Simplifying processes. I think that's crucial, to simplify processes, because as we simplify, then digitalization is easier once we simplify. Maria. Thank you, Virginia. So I think that we need to modernize these stations. The electric plants are getting older, so we need to modernize plants. They have to work together with manufacturers of equipment so they can implement those changes required. Thank you, Maria. Very good point. Alex.
30 seconds.
Okay, Virginia. I think in distribution, modernization of substations and also the installation of reclosers in the grid are the first steps to quickly have a gain for the customers, again, especially in the power quality indicators. Okay, but these are high investments, so there is need for structural financing. I think it's important to evaluate also the regulation, as Michelle said.
Wonderful. Thank you. Augusto, adelante.
Yes, very briefly.
Augusto, you have the floor.
Depend on the utility, and I can share the experience. For example, I have been working with the Caribbean quite intensively over the last years, and one of the things that for them is the most important thing now is resilience. So getting ready and becoming resilient for extreme climate events. So for them, that's a priority, and I think digitalization across the geospace has a lot of opportunities for improvement there.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful group of panelists. What wonderful presentations. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think we cover a big spectrum of different topics that are very relevant for our region. And we are convinced, and this presentation today is proof of that there's not going to be any energy transition or decarbonization without digitalization. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'm sorry we ran out of time, but there was a lot to cover. And I want to thank Olave for organizing this event and all the coordination, and for the time and dedication of all these wonderful panelists. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
all.
the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Agradecemos a nuestros panelistas.
We would like to thank our panelists that were part of the Roundtable 1 about digitalization of infrastructure service companies and the benefits for the sector. Briefly, after this introductory video, we're going to start with Roundtable 2 on green recovery after COVID. Please stay connected.
Bienvenidos nuevamente. Damos paso a la mesa 2.
Welcome once again to Roundtable 2 of the Green Recovery post-COVID. We invite Michelle Halak, who will be moderating the next session.
Muchísimas gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Antes de empezar, para dar las bienvenidas a
I would like to welcome
tan importante sesión, me gustaría invitar
you all to this session, the Chief of the Energy Department, Marcelino Madrigal, so that he can open this panel. Thank you very much, Michelle, and welcome you all, and thanks for being here today. I would like to thank Olave for the invitation to be part of this Energy Week. In this session, we are going to talk about economic recovery not only the impact on the energy sector, but also how we from the energy sector can contribute to a sustainable economic recovery. As you know, there's no other region in the world more affected than Latin America. Poverty in the region is increasing, and it's something that equals the 20 years. We have already lost 43 million jobs in the region. After a year, the region has not been able to recover the number of jobs lost. Inequality and poverty are in the increase, and in some places where we were lucky enough to continue working remotely, this remote work affected people in different ways, especially women, because they have to still perform activities at home, and also public finance. There has been an impact on the fiscal capacity of the government in the region. They had to face the health crisis and to promote fiscal incentives. So the protection networks were in place to reactivate economy. We estimate that public debt in some of the countries has increased up to 20 percentage points, and all this debt has affected the risk qualifications in different countries. So recovery of economy in the energy sector, that's important. I think that the sector needs to ensure services, high quality services in a sustainable way. But we also believe, strongly believe, that in the energy sector, we need to transform this emergency in an economic recovery. And I think that the 2025 vision of the ITB is a reference to think about in this moment. To combat climate change may help us to enhance economic recovery. The energy sector is fundamental for all the countries in the region, and also regional integration that, as we have discussed during this week, it's also fundamental. The panelists will tell us about their ideas, but I will share some points, activities that can be implemented to promote economic recovery. The energy sector is key to face climate change, accelerating investment to decarbonize not only the electric sector, but also to go beyond borders. Investment in renewables promotes the generation of jobs. So accelerating decarbonization can also accelerate job creation and bridge the gap between genders. We have seen important data about how women are integrated in the energy sector, especially in renewables. So to continue increasing the use of new technologies, that is very important, and following the right strategy that could help to reduce inequality. Also productivity, so we can attract those value chains of electro-intensive industries that generate jobs for the region. The region needs to be more competitive when it comes to prices for electric energy and the different users. And that's why we need to accelerate and increase productivity of economy, making sure that prices are affordable and of a high quality. Also, to accelerate and improve quality within the energy sector, we need to continue increasing the number of facilities that through market mechanisms can reduce cost for users, giving different options so that they can face the challenges, especially to compete with other regions and being attractive for investment, and thus reactivating the economy. Since we have very limited tax opportunities, we need to attract the private sector in different areas of the energy sector. We need to have stable regulations. Frameworks should be appropriate for risk assessment, so private investment is attracted and we can increase productivity of the energy sector within and out of borders. We need to increase productivity of electro-intensive companies that generate value chains in the region, and also in times where we have limited investment by public companies, we need to generate income for the public sector, and if it doesn't, at least not to become a burden for the states. And right now, we need to work together to focus grants for those that really need it, so that grants reach those most vulnerable communities without affecting public finance in moments where we still need resources to look after priority activities.
And that's my introduction. I'm sure that the panel will surely discuss multiple ideas. We need to think big about what we can do in the energy sector to reactivate economy and set the groundwork for a more sustainable growth that's fighting our challenge, which is climate change. Without further ado, thank you. And I go back to you, Michelle. Thank you, Marcelino. That is a very interesting introduction. I want to very briefly share a slide with you just to go back to 2 points mentioned by Marcelino. First, I want to talk about sustainable recovery of Latin America and the Caribbean. This is our main goal, and it lies to the IDB 2025 vision, and it is associated to 5 different points. This is a very significant point in our agenda. And as Marcelino mentioned, we can divide this into 2 big groups. First of all, we have expenditures, that is investments to create jobs, accelerate economic reactivation, and facilitate the energy transition and modernization, of course. And then 2 income, that is 2 measures that would reduce and direct energy subsidies to create fiscal spaces for recovery. So I would like to begin by mentioning the publications that we conducted, and I invite you to take a look at them. The first one has to do with the impact of COVID-19 on the demand of energy in the LAC region. We also conducted work together with OLADE on the discussion held with government, and it presents recommendations for policies and regulations for economic reactivation. And these elements mentioned by Marcelino are included here on the role of energy transition in the LAC region. And this is just the first step. We are working now with OLADE to look at what are the next steps ahead and what is the toolkit for the recovery. So that is just a brief call for discussion. We have great panelists today with us. Today we have Marta Bernal, Francisco Ángel, Miguel Figueroa, and Felipe Michelanos. I would like to invite all of you to turn on your cameras so we can start with this discussion about this topic, about this relevant topic for the region. I'll go one person at a time, okay? So I want to get started with the first very general questions for all 4 of you. Which are the economy sectors who you believe should be prioritized in this recovery process? In your opinion, what are the main sectors that we need to focus on? First, I want to ask Marta to start answering. Marta has worked in different areas of the energy sector, such as in the electric power distribution companies, such as Union Fenosa, ENSA, and North Control Panama. And since 2009, she has worked at the National Energy Secretariat, where she is the focal point for international technical cooperation and promotes and coordinates relevant projects for the energy sector of the country. Marta, what can you tell us about this? What are the sectors that you believe are central for Panama in this recovery process? Michelle, I think Martha is offline. Oh, I'm sorry. If she is not here, then let's move to the next one. And if she logs in again, we'll ask her then. Let me move on then to Francisco Angel. Francisco, the question is the same, but now thinking about Ecuador. Francisco Angel is the Director of Energy Analysis and Perspectives from the Ministry of Energy and Non-Renewable Natural Resources of Ecuador. Francisco, what is your perspective on the post-COVID green recovery? What are the sectors and the areas that can better support the recovery process? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to greet you from Ecuador. Thank you for the invitation. To answer your questions, I think we need to contextualize this and talk about how we have been able to survive this global crisis, especially with the South American region. I think we have had many coincidences, and unfortunately, they have shown the states of the region and I think most of the world that we are vulnerable. We have not been able to answer to the crisis as we should have, and because of that, we have faced a very negative backlash in our societies and our economies, and in the slight development that we had faced before. We can look at this glass as something that is half empty, but we can also see this as half full, as an opportunity. And I think that that's what we should do. We need to look at this from a positive perspective in order to make changes to those things that we had not been doing correctly, and also in order to align to initiatives that have been useful in our region or in other regions as well. So in that context, I believe that governments are looking towards an opportunity in this energy transition. Now, this energy transition entails new technologies that are aligned with the precepts and the goals that we have set at the global level, such as the reduction of global warming and an improvement of our life quality. For this energy transition, I believe that all of our countries have adopted different strategies. In the case of Ecuador, we do foresee the inclusion of energies that are renewable because our energy mix in Ecuador already has a high penetration of hydropower. Let's say that 85% to 90% of our mixes comes from hydropower. Our efforts have been great, but our challenges remain even greater. And within that context, renewable energy is a fundamental pillar for the development of Ecuador, but we want to make this a friendly, responsible process. And for that, we have looked into investments from the private sector. And yes, we are open to the world, and we also want the world to be open to us. And I think that that's the vision of many of our neighbor countries as well. And something that calls our attention and that it has been calling our attention in the past few months is that the investments in the energy sector have come from capitals that are destined to renewables. So I believe that the pandemic did not actually limit or become a roadblock for investors to actually put money on renewables. I think that that's one of the market spots that has grown the most. So I think that in this crisis, we are facing a great opportunity for fresh capital to be invested in renewables in Ecuador. And of course, for Ecuador to create a legal framework for those investments to come into the country and help us grow in a more sustainable way. So that's what I have to say about renewables, but there are other sectors as well, as the case of mobility, construction, tourism, which are more environmentally friendly, and they keep and maintain our natural capital. There are many areas where we can attract investment towards sustainable development. Thank you very much, Francisco Angel, for this vision that this transition is an opportunity for us. We are getting out of a very difficult situation, but there is a long road ahead of us. And in this process, the transition should be sustainable. Now, within this context, I would like to talk about Honduras. Miguel Figueroa, who is the General Director of the Energy Secretariat. Miguel, I want to know about how Honduras is looking at this process and about what are the areas in which this green recovery process is stronger in the case of Honduras. Miguel, you are on mute. Oh, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Michelle. Good afternoon to the panelists. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. As I was saying, it is a joy to see you again. I think the last time I saw you, Michelle, was in September 2017, so it's nice to see you all again. Now, with regards to our work towards green recovery, in Honduras in particular, as the Energy Secretariat, I would like to tell you that beyond the context of the pandemic and beyond the problems arising from them, such as the increase in expenditures and the public debt, the issues with the lack of income, the offer shock and the shock in the energy sector, in particular with regards to the contraction in the demand, we find in Honduras that we are in a crisis because we're also struck by 2 tropical storms. So in that case, the healthcare emergency combined with the natural disasters, with the Iota and Yeta storms, magnified the need for efforts in Honduras and, of course, in the entirety of the Central American region. And within that context, the government created this plan for sustainable recovery as a way to immediately respond to the crisis and make up for the losses caused by the pandemic.
Also implementing further improvements to strengthen sustainability and resilience of our system in the face of disaster, and also this is a great opportunity to start a green recovery process, taking into account renewable energies, and they play a fundamental role in all this. In this sense, the plan becomes, and it's available on the website of the National Coordination website. This is a main objective of a national program, and that also is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. The priorities for the plan is the development and social welfare that includes all issues related to health, education, territorial planning and reduction of environmental vulnerability, enhancing the productive transformation, talking about value chains and modernization, and resilience of infrastructure. We are working with sponsors on resilience of the electric system. For all the economy sectors, then we want to promote and implement comprehensive measures that are sustainable for populations, for those that are most vulnerable, providing social protection, also to work in food security. We need to work with our access plans. We need to have a universal access to electricity plan that is part of the recovery project, also to increase income. Something like 600,000 jobs were lost, and also natural disasters, the rebuilding of houses. We need to guarantee access to energy and all those aspects related to rebuilding infrastructure, drinking water, and increase coverage and improve services in those areas as education and health. We're also working in electromobility within the framework of our energy policy, and we see there's a great opportunity in these crises so that we can promote renewables and generating jobs, sustainable mobility, universal access to modern energies, reduction of the use of fossil fuels, and improving access to electricity. I can tell you that we are aligned with several strategies and projects in the Energy Secretariat with the support of multilateral banking, the Inter-American Development Bank. And that is all the information I have, the efforts by the government to align all these plans and projects. And as the Energy Secretariat, we are committed to promote renewable energy use as part of the resilience, both the projects to add value to the energy sector and thus generating jobs. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. Thank you, Miguel. Let's, as you mentioned, two very important aspects. The first one, this sustainable recovery plan. We have several pieces in this jigsaw, but having a plan, it's very useful to organize. And this is related to other areas, and I think that is very important. And then food, water, and energy, that group that is combined and interacts with other sectors, that's very interesting. And also, another comment that you mentioned is energy efficiency. A work that we are carrying out shows that the energy sector can generate many different jobs, and it's a very good opportunity for job creation. That is also very interesting. Thank you very much for that. Now I would like to invite Felipe Mijans, that is the General Director of Energy Resources, Vice Ministry of the Ministry of Public Works in Paraguay, so he can tell us a little bit about his opinion. What is it like from Paraguay's standpoint? Which are the main stakeholders when it comes to green recovery in Paraguay? Thank you very much, everybody. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. In Paraguay, we are working on the supply side with non-conventional renewable energies and also in the transport sector. Recently, we have launched our roadmap for green governance, also working on mobility. When it comes to non-conventional renewable energies, we have recently published the master plan for generation for 2040. As we previously saw, the mix of Paraguay is 100% hydro. And right now we are diversifying the supply for 2040 with 18% of non-conventional renewable energies. We're talking about solar farms, batteries in the mid and the long term. When it comes to green hydrogen, we want to decarbonize the transport sector, especially the heavy-duty transportation. When it comes to electric mobility, we're also implementing electric buses. Now we are working in order to, we want to have 30% of electric mobility by 2050. That is not enough to decarbonize the hydrocarbon sector. So now we're paying attention to CapEx and paying attention to the variation rates, having the option to include within the perspective post-COVID the penetration of 5 to 10% of hydrogen, taking into account that Paraguay has a surplus of hydro sources, and also we have the lowest prices for electric energy. That is an overview of the situation in Paraguay. Thank you very much, Felipe. Now I would like to talk again with you, but this time from the standpoint of policies. Right now, we have just had the COP26 in Glasgow, where we had very clear objectives. We wanted to have zero net emissions by 2050 in order not to go beyond 1.5 Celsius degrees, to protect communities in the region, to mobilize finance, and mainly to work together, taking into account integration and find a way of making progress together. So now I would like to ask you all, if we think about strategies and policies that countries have put in place, what can we expect? What can we expect of policies and strategies that can promote this energy revolution, especially taking into account the COP26? What can we expect from countries? What can we expect when it comes to policies and strategies in the past and in the future in each of our countries? No, I would start with Felipe. So let's see if you can tell us a little bit about policies in order to promote this green recovery. Whether you think about that after the country's participation in Glasgow, if there are some things to implement, what's Paraguay's overview? Well, when it comes to emissions, the emission factor for Paraguay is very low if compared to our neighboring countries. Transport sector represents between 12 and 17% when it comes to greenhouse gases emissions. So taking this into account and these new policies that we are implementing when it comes to diversifying supply of energy and energy transition, that is key not only for Paraguay, but it is one of the strongest elements considering hydrogen as an energy vector. We believe that we have an advantage when it comes to emissions. Paraguay is currently presenting several projects. We believe that we have an advantage since we have an emission factor that is one of the lowest in the region. That would allow us to increase consumption with non-conventional renewable energies and to widen our ambitions in NDC. Interesting, Felipe. Thank you very much. And you mentioned something that is very important to me, that is hydrogen and the potential in the region and how to make the most out of it. And also, it's interesting to know that you are already working with NAMA to make progress in that area. And I think that's a very important step. Sometimes it's not very easy to implement these actions, especially when thinking about short-term opportunities. And taking this into account, the fact that industry is not only electricity, Paraguay has always used this kind of energy. As a Brazilian, we have this historic relationship with Itaipu, and it's important to think about decarbonization of all the other areas, such as transports, among others. I think it's very interesting. Thank you very much. So now I go back to Miguel. Miguel, what do you think about uh, in Honduras? How can we think about the policies and strategies in the future from the standpoint of green recovery after this momentum generated after the COP? Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for the opportunity. When it comes to policies and strategies promoted in Honduras, we include this factor of green recovery, as I was telling you some minutes ago about the sustainable reconstruction plan, an immediate response to the crisis generated by natural disasters, and that is aligned with all the national instruments that we have, and also the national agenda for the SDGs. The Energy Secretariat has been promoting several strategies that are part of our roadmap for energy policies at national level. And as part of the main areas to be covered in this recovery mission, we have developed processes of several instruments and strategies that have been presented to our authorities, such as a proposal for energy efficiency policy, as you mentioned before, that is fundamental for economic recovery and job creation. Another proposal for a national policy for geothermal energy of direct use in cooperation with Germany and IDB. Also, a policy of universal access to electricity that will be launched tomorrow that include access plans with the support of the IDB, working together with the National Company of Electric Energy, and also draft. We have a law about rational use of energy, social electrification law. So working in order to have economic recovery post-COVID, we are implementing significant projects, the recovery of the health sector. We have a pilot program to be replicated where we consider renewable energies and energy efficiency for the hospital in the country that works with cardiopulmonary diseases. This will be a pilot implemented thanks to German cooperation, always with the support of German cooperation. We follow the decarbonization strategy for public transport, where we work together with other organizations, especially with the regulator of public transport in Honduras. We are getting help and contributions from other international agencies, creating the legal framework to promote the use of electricity in mobility.
We also have direct energy use projects, such as the case of geothermal energy. And we have strategies to increase the resilience of electrical systems. We also want to be able to anticipate national disasters by creating contingency plans. And we also have been working with the NDC partnership to have climate actions in order to improve the climate vision and align this with our energy projects and policies. So by doing all of this, we want to create a roadmap for the economic reactivation of the country and for energy efficiency and safety. So that, in summary, would be the public policies that we are implementing. And that is what we are doing in order to use this windtail that we're getting from Glasgow. We see an opportunity here in this model to recover from losses and damages. We are trying to find what are the different solutions to adapt. So we see an opportunities to strengthen our capacities by working together with other countries that have undertaken pledges in Glasgow. So we discussed all of this in the conference. There is strong work ahead of us if we want to create this action plan, and if we want this action plan to properly work within our market. But we also see an opportunity to decrease our emissions and to have this sector reach ambitious goals. Of course, we need to work on human capital and train human capital. We also need to properly adapt our measures. We need to foster transparency. We need to strengthen our institutions. We need to improve our policies and regulations. We need to create action plans. All of this in alignment with our pledges. And if we do all of that, we will reach our goals. Thank you. Thank you very much. You mentioned very interesting topics. Especially, you mentioned universal access, which is a goal for us in this decade. And I think it's important to take advantage of this opportunity to reach that universal access. And it's a pleasure to hear about the work that you guys have been doing. You also brought up two other aspects that I think are also part of this recovery agenda, which is carbon neutrality. And in this context of fiscal matters and of incentives, I think this is a very important topic for us to start working on in a serious and proactive manner, especially considering the challenges that lay ahead. This is no easy feat, of course, but it is a necessary thing to work on, especially if we want to reach our environmental ambitions. And something that really calls my attention is when thinking about new technologies, and you mentioned geothermal energy in particular, how we can use these energies to move forward in the process. So thank you for that, Miguel. So now I want to go back to the case of Ecuador, Francisco Angel. How can we think about policies? How can we look at these changes for the case of Ecuador? And are you applying these policies in Ecuador? And how can you make use of Glasgow in order to improve the green recovery in Ecuador? Thank you again for your question. We share many similarities with the other members of the panel. I'm sorry. My connection broke for a second. As I was saying, the question is whether or not countries are fully committed and have governments that actually meet the demands of our society. I think that COVID made us rethink and review many things, including our planning. Is our planning holistic, or are we working individually per sector? I think that at the internal level of our governments and states, we need to think about that, and then we need to join forces to meet our goals. We in Ecuador adhere to the Paris Agreement, we adhere to the 2030 agenda, and in the past few years we have been working towards that. But it has also been necessary to restructure our state And this restructuring needs to meet the three main pillars demanded by society. We need to have a public organization that is competent. We need to have a government that is trustworthy and that hears out all sectors. And as such, a government that is efficient in its leadership. If we follow these three principles in our governments and our states, I believe that all public policies might be achieved, might be well developed, and might meet all of our goals. Within that context, I think that Ecuador has been working towards a green transition. Our new president, as a matter of fact, started his mandate and came into office setting the green transition as an aspect of the public agenda. And of course, we make this green transition through the energy transition. So the consumption of energy and the use of energy becomes a main pillar to reach the goals of our state, which are basically to have a sustainable development in our economies and in our societies. And what we have seen is that it is necessary to decarbonize our economies. We have also seen that it is necessary to have electrical mobility and sustainable mobility, which is why the mobility regulators have already created a national strategy for sustainable mobility. And one of the main axes of this system is to have electrical mobility. Within the electrical system, we also focus on the development of non-conventional renewables. And by the end of 2021, we hope we will have a tender for 500 megawatts of non-conventional renewable energy, which could be doubled by 2022. We would have 1,000 megawatts. So we are adhering to the need to make an efficient use of our natural resources. And perhaps we know that we need to change the way in which we deal with oil in order to export it and not use it within our own borders. And we need to have a holistic planning that shows the perspectives of all sectors and that bring in the efforts of all sectors alike. So we are creating an energy strategy for the country projected for 2050 that brings in the perspectives of multiple sectors. We also want to have a master plan for 2032 that places an energy, renewable energy mix of over 92%. And as I mentioned before, we have reached an average of 90%, but it is hard to stay there, and it is also hard to surpass that. Because at the same time, our state is thinking about an economic development, and this means that we need to incentivize the industry and trade. And for that, of course, we need energy. And the way in which we use and produce that energy will be the challenge for us to actually leverage other projects. From the perspective of the oil industry, we are working on projects to capture emissions and to include that within a micro system that might help us reuse that. We will capture that and reuse that in industrial oil systems so that that does not go into the environment. We are trying to be pragmatic. We want less emissions, but we want more development. Now, within that context, we are creating a mobility strategy that contemplates in the mid and long term the inclusion of over 3 million electrical vehicles. But of course, that sets challenges at the regulation, at the legal level, but also challenges to have incentives. We are not looking for subsidies, of course. We have been at fault for many years. because it has been hard to focus these subsidies. We fight for them to be more efficient, but at the end of the day, we do not reach our goals. So we're thinking about incentives for these initiatives, for these projects articulated using electrical mobility. Thank you for that answer, Francisco Angel. Those were very interesting topics you mentioned, especially this idea of planning from multiple sectors. From the bank, we are looking at long-term strategies. We want to look at the energy sector and at the many uses of energy in the industry and in transport. And in general, we want a planning that is looked at from many perspectives and in long term, so that by 2050 we can achieve our goals in the best way possible. So we, I think, need to incorporate a multi-sectoral dialogue in this recovery process, because we want to recover in a sustainable way. And another topic that I think is important that you bring up is that, differently from what happens in other countries, the electrical demand in Latin America is growing steadily. And we know that the COVID impact has been significant, but the trend shows that there is an increase in the demand that is above that of other developed countries in other parts of the world. We know that the industry needs to be more productive. We know that people want more access to services, and this is a challenge to maintain renewability, but also increase renewability in our energy mixes, and we need to work on that too. So thank you for bringing those aspects up. Now, I want to go back to you and ask you in 30 seconds to tell me, look, these are the next steps ahead. If I had to say one or two elements and mention one or two elements that, in your opinion, are priorities for the next steps ahead, what would those one or two things be? And I would like to start with you, Miguel. Could you tell us, in your opinion, if you had to choose two bullet points that are the next steps ahead, what would those things be? So first, a just energy transition through the SDGs, creating commitments at the highest level by bringing in public energy policies that include everyone's participation without leaving anyone behind. That is our vision for the holistic integration of the Energy Secretariat. Thank you for that. This idea of inclusive transition, I think, is very important. Felipe, did you mention one or two bullet points for next steps ahead? Yes, of course. To consolidate within a single agenda our objectives. Each country has its own objectives. So work towards a joint agenda on the basis of our common points, which are green economy and green hydrogen. Thank you. I now go to you, Felipe. Francisco, give me 2 points for the next steps.
We cannot hear you, Felipe. Hello, can you hear me? I can think of two, maybe three. Maybe it would be to develop management systems at internal level in each of the countries that are not repetitive, but to try to look beyond that, to take the risk to adopt new models. That could be, for instance, the circular economy model. That would be a great challenge in our countries. Another idea that I can think of is to optimize regional resources. We don't have the same things in all the countries, not at the same time. So maybe as part of the cooperation in the region, we can optimize resources according to the benefit for the whole region, taking into account the quality of life of citizens in the region. And third step, I believe that we are going through a stage in which we need to think beyond ideologies, to focus on state policy, to think about the short, mid, long, and super long terms, to be consistent and pragmatic with what we think and what we do, to go beyond ideologies. Thank you very much. So I would keep that word, regional cooperation, that is at the heart of what we do. I think it's a very relevant point when we think about the recovery of the whole region. Now, to wrap up, as part of this recovery effort, post-COVID, the IDB, also part of the regional cooperation, we work a lot with OLADE, not only during the Energy Week, but we have implemented several studies within this process. We are working in the region, and the idea of the public service campaign is to recover best practices. So those energy providers need to be involved in the recovery so that we can share these good experiences. So the idea is to create a toolbox, not only that is useful for today, but also to have future cooperation opportunities and increase the resilience of the sector, that I think it's a very relevant point in this discussion. So the objective should be regional cooperation and try to disseminate information about that toolbox. And we should do that together in different agencies in the region, where we need to disseminate and work together in regional cooperation to share knowledge and information. So I would like to close this panel. Thank you very much for your work. Unfortunately, we could not have our guest from Panama. Hope everything is all right in Panama. And thank you once again to you all for being part of this panel and the discussion of this very relevant topic to our region. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks to you. Bye-bye. We would like to thank our panelists in this session and all the audience that stayed connected in this fourth day of the Energy Week. Also to all the audience connected through the different visual platforms. We would like to invite you to our 7th panel of energy perspectives that will take place tomorrow at 9 a.m. Quito time. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
La Organización Latinoamericana de Energía, OLADE, se complace en presentar la aplicación de estadísticas energéticas de América Latina y el Caribe. Es una aplicación ágil para la consulta de información energética nacional y regional, que facilita el acceso rápido a cifras relevantes y comparativas. La app de OLADE presenta información sobre las características generales más relevantes a nivel demográfico, económico y energético, así como datos de oferta y demanda de energía, generación eléctrica, capacidad instalada de generación, reservas probadas de fuentes fósiles, diagrama Sankey del balance energético e indicadores socioeconómicos, energéticos y ambientales. La información que brinda la aplicación es presentada de manera dinámica a través de gráficos y tablas de datos que corresponden a los últimos 10 años. Más información en www.olade.org/app-olade.